Hello, everybody. My name is Carlo Azzarri. I work at IFAD. I work at IFAD and the submission 7009 on leveraging data to set objectives and make decisions. What can we learn from impact assessments, the experience from IFAD? So these are joint collaborative effort between IFAD colleagues and IFAD colleagues and others, and colleagues from other institutions, on the impacts of IFAD project on multiple dimensions of women's empowerment. So let me start with the objectives and contribution overall of this study. So we know that there is a commitment, an increasing commitment to gender equality and women's empowerment, and this commitment is witnessed by the international community in setting up, for example, the SDGs, especially SDG 9 on gender, but also in projects. And here we would like to know if the commitments are, followed by action, and if projects are really delivering on the promises, on the commitments. And through this project, through these projects, what is working and what is not working on gender. And before doing that, of course, we need to measure what is working and what is not working. So for this project, we use some metrics, and the metrics are mostly on three dimensions. So dimensions on reaching, and indicators on reaching women are mostly on participation, so participation in benefits, in training, in credit access, in credit programs, etc. Benefits are mostly segregated indicators. For example, female food security or contribution of women on household income, nutrition, individual nutrition, especially nutrition among female members of the household. Then we have another level that are indicators on empowerment. So it essentially refers to the ability to make strategic life choices. And empowerment, the concept is strictly related to the agency, to the agency dimensions. And we can distinguish three types of agency. The intrinsic agency, so the individual intrinsic ability within oneself to make choices, within the individual to make choices. The instrumental agency, so while the intrinsic measure the willingness, the inner willingness to make choices, then the instrumental agency is powered to make choices, to make strategic life choices. And the third type is collective agency, so the power with other people to make choices. So the collective agency is the individual, how the choices of individual interact with the choice of the group, with the collective choices. There are also, and these are on the measurement side, on the more, let's say, political side, on the commitment side, IFAD has set some gender policy objectives related to economic empowerment. So the institutions would like to promote women and to enable them, to enable rural women, but also men, to have the same opportunity to participate in and to benefit from the activities, especially economic activities, productive activities. They would like men and women to have equal voice and influence in institutions and organizations, especially in rural institutions. To achieve more equitable balance in workload, in sharing economic and social benefits, again, between the two groups, between men and women. They set up target and reports on gender dimension for the project at the beginning of the project, at implementation, and also at completion. And IFAD set up a monitoring framework that is self-disaggregated, collecting information on beneficiary and their characteristics. So let's look at the development of the IFAD integrated WIA. So it's WIA stands for Women's Empowerment in Agriculture Index. And we developed a specific version of the index for the IFAD project. And the challenge here was that we would like to measure women's empowerment with other outcome indicators, mostly using the IFAD questionnaire, the standard, let's say, RIA, Research Impact Assessment questionnaire. We would like to minimize from the beginning the survey time, so the survey length, the interview length, but also show relevance to projects. So we would like to have a good measure, a reliable measure of, gender-specific measure of impacts and indicators, sex-specific indicators. So the response here, so the strategy adopted is to adapt a question from the RIA questionnaire to cover the 5 pro-WIA indicators associated, so linking them to the individual information in the roster. So whenever we ask about a specific question to a proxy respondent, then we linked this question, this response to the individual ID in the roster. So this way we could look at the individual characteristics in the roster. I mean, of course, doing that, there are some issues that I will talk about in a minute. Doing that, of course, require additional questions that we ask on separate modules on the remaining 5 pro-WIA indicators that are not covered in the integrated questionnaire. Doing that involves some challenges. The first challenge is the use of proxy respondents for some questions, or we're not using the direct respondent for some questions. And the second challenge is that is related to the difference in wording of questions, and also indicator construction and the associated indicator construction compared to the original pro-WIA. So in order to reconcile this difference, we conducted an experiment in Kenya using the full pro-WIA, the project level WIA, with the IFAD version of the WIA, the integrated one, for a subsample of households. So here is the original WIA. So you see the 3 dimensions of the agency, the intrinsic agency, the instrumental and collective agency, so the 3 measure of agencies. Note here that this differs from the original pro-WIA on which we collected the indicators, because it doesn't include respect among household members and membership in influential groups. So they were seen as a little bit ambiguous depending on the cultural context. So now the pro-WIA is measured on 10 of these dimensions, and each indicator receives an equal proportion of the overall weight of the indicators. It's 1/10, since 10 are the indicators. And individuals consider empowered if he or she is adequate in 80% of these indicators. And the dimensions that are shown in blue use the modified RIA questions. So in the integrated household level questionnaire, compared to the questionnaire where the primary male respondent and the primary female respondents are interviewed. So not in the blue. So the green and the red are the original pro-WIA, so they are standalone pro-WIA modules. So the calculation of the IFAD WIA score is the same as the traditional WIA. So it's 90% is made up of the 3 domains of empowerment according to the agency, so the direct measure of the empowerment in the 2 dimensions. And then 10% is made up by the gender parity index. There is the achievement, women's achievement compared to the primary male in household. And again, this indexes range from 0 to 1. And of course, the higher the value of the index, the higher the degree of empowerment. And these indicators are decomposable indicators to look at heterogeneity across different groups. We incorporated these measures into the impact assessment, the 6 impact assessments that represent 1/4 of the total impact assessment portfolio of IFAD 11 cycle, development cycle, in 6 different countries in sub-Saharan Africa, so Mali, Nigeria, Ghana, Tanzania, Kenya, and Djibouti. Mali was a microfinance project, Nigeria was a value chain, Ghana was business enterprise, Tanzania was more on infrastructure and rural finance, Kenya was a natural resource management project, and finally Djibouti was on program to combat climate change, especially among the fisher folks in coastal communities. We present the impact estimates, so how the impact estimates are calculated, using the inverse probability weighting with regression adjustment is said to be W robust because controlled for individual characteristics, observable characteristics, and we report the average treatment effectively treated with respect to potential outcome means that are they're not the straight means of the sample, but are the expected means predicted by using regression adjustment. So these are the means of the treated had been treated. So if there were controls, and they are calculated the same way as the predicted mean of the treated to be homogeneous. We reported percentage difference for continuous variables and percentage points difference for shares of dummy variables. Of course, both of them respect to the potential outcome means as just described. We also look at, of course, the IV indicators, not only components, but the aggregate indicators. We calculate the empowerment scores, is the weighted sum of individual adequacy across the 12 indicators. The intra-household inequality score, the difference between empowerment score of the men and women, whereby positive scores identifies that the man is more empowered than the women, and then the opposite occurs when the score is negative. So the woman is more empowered than the man. Finally, we compute the gender parity index, and there is parity if the woman is empowered or the women's empowerment score is equal or is equal to or greater than the man's empowerment score. So here are the results. These are the aggregate results, and here we can see that overall there are positive effects on empowerment on the three measures. Actually, the four measures that we reported here. So inequality score, gender parity, except in Nigeria for a reason that I'm going to talk about in a second. And results are also the single components are largely positive, again, except in Nigeria and also in Kenya as well for some indicators. So for Nigeria, the reason is that after our evaluations, after we collected the data, then the project effectively rethought the gender strategy and made important investment on the gender components of the project. So and these results do not speak to that because again the data were collected before. So that's why maybe the results are mixed. In terms of joint participation, we found positive impact in Mali, Ghana, and Tanzania and Kenya, so in 4 countries, and also on joint production decisions. So both joint participation and joint production decision in Ghana and Tanzania, although in this case, they're mixed for Mali, and again, Nigeria also we find negative impact on both on joint participation and joint production decisions. For the 6 countries, in this case also Djibouti, there are mixed results. We found mixed results on female access ownership. So we found positive results on Mali, but that's the only country. So we pointed at this dimension as needing a little bit of progress. So we need to rethink how the strategy on building female asset ownership is constructed. And in general, also food security was positive. So the project positively affected our food security, although we found mixed results when we look at female food security. It's actually even negative. We found even negative results for female food security in Mali. So that's one dimension of concern. A little bit on the experiment. We surveyed a total of 1,900 households, so 1,600 households with a traditional, let's say, IWEA, actually with a new IWEA, while the 300 households with a traditional ProWEA. The 300 Athur were randomly selected, divided equally between treated by the project and control. So the idea was the area questions were included as part of the main survey, and we interviewed the area using the proxy respondent, typically the head, while for area we used the usual protocol. So we interviewed the primary male and female respondent from each household, and the survey included a FORWIA plus the basic demographics. So the objective here is to assess the effect of the area, of using the area versus the use of the FORWIA on survey respondent selection on the two dimensions, the challenges that I mentioned before. So one was on the survey respondent selection, and the second one was on the phrasing, on the wording of the questions, on survey design mostly, and how these affect the measure of empowerment. So these are the findings on the empowerment score and household inequality score. We didn't find any statistically significant difference. So the first column, the model 1, is without including controls, and the second column is with including controls, but the results are mostly similar. So when we interact with the female respondent, and also when we look at the W for the experiment, whether the household is part of the experiment or not, we didn't find any significant effect. If you think that 0.1 is roughly one indicator difference because of the indicators is composed by 10 subcomponents. In terms of empowerment status and gender parity status, there is a slightly higher value for ProWIA in empowerment compared to IWIA. So if anything, then the IWIA provides an underestimate of the empowerment. So it's a conservative estimate, let's say, of the dimension, so which is actually a good feature. Finally, before concluding, I would like to mention that we use mixed methods, not only quantitative, but also qualitative interviewing. And these are the main takeaways that we try to summarize by project. So on the positive side, for example, in Mali, on the microfinance project, there was a good engagement of women in credit groups, and also women participate more, engage more in decision making and collective action. On the negative side, there was no strong evidence that this group participation positively increased the women political power, and also the presence of gender norms hampered the women's effective participation and changing women's role in the public space. So this program lacked a transformative approach. Although this is a common element across the board, maybe except one project I'm going to talk about in a second. So in terms of, for the Nigeria Value Chain Development Project, there was an improved employment opportunities for both for women who were not part of the productive, let's say, work, so that were taking up also chores, and for women that are already embedded into the rice and cassava value chain, who also include for which there was an improvement in yields and product quality and linkages to markets. Although, again, also in the case of Nigeria, the gender norms limited women's capacity to participate in effective value chains. Also because of discriminative practices, or discrimination against women regarding their household duties compared to the productive activities. Ghana is one of the let's say, best examples of women's of increasing women's empowerment. So the enhanced women access to banking services. There was an increase in women in women leadership roles, and also we found changes in behavioral and perception about women's inclusion in economic activities. On the negative side, participants lamented the lack of gender-specific training, and again, a little bit of the social norms, again, limiting their effective activities and also the stereotypes in assigning activities across men and women. In Djibouti, there was enhanced women participation in groups as well as in collective resources, although this project was not gender formative by design, because still the fishing activity was seen as mostly a men's activity. So women did not enjoy the same access to resources as men did. So the Tanzania women were successful in groups dynamics and also had greater influence in their communities. There was a shift in their role in value chains, and also was a positive effect of loans that increased in women's ability to invest in farming. Although again, there was a negative comment on the participation of many women. That was dictated mostly by the men who couldn't allow the participation of women into these influential groups. In Kenya, the project enabled integration of gender equality content, and also we found substantial benefits, women-specific benefits in terms of ownership of income, meaning control over income, shift in domestic roles. Although women identified the need for credit access that maybe was not often followed through by project implementers, and that was something that we highlighted. Finally, the gender implication in the conclusions that most projects led to improvements on women's empowerment measure. So we look at mostly 4, so empowerment score, percentage of achieving individual sufficient empowerment, equality score, and gender parity index. Almost all projects have increased the joint participation in decision making. So, but unfortunately, only the joint. So we look at also total harvest, quantity produced, crop sales from jointly managed plots. The problem was that maybe the more attention should be devoted to the female-only decision making. Compared to the joint decision making, or in addition to joint decision making. And it was also a negative effect on female food security, as we saw, and also on female asset ownership, including land. So these 3 elements might make a difference in empowerment, especially regarding the intrinsic agency, so the power within, for which impacts were largely ambiguous, right? And finally, an important lesson learned of this project is that IWIA could be a cost-effective, a conservative alternative to the ProWIA, so an effective substitute, as it requires approximately half fewer questions compared to the ProWIA. Thank you, and if there are any questions, I will be happy to answer in the question and answer section. Thank you.